Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the January meeting of the Philipstown Conservation Board. I'm Andy Galler, and I'm acting as chairperson tonight for the board. Do we have, first on our right is Surprise Lake Camp. Do we have any representatives for that?
Yes, we have Matt and Cheryl. I'm just moving them over.
Welcome, Matt, and welcome, Cheryl.
Thank you. Thank you for having us this evening.
Do you want to begin? You all right now?
If you don't mind, that's wonderful. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. As a follow-up to the last hearing, I don't recall the date off the top of my head, but we had discussed the tree clearing that happened just adjacent to the ropes course over by the Unit H or the Highland area. We had talked about what a reclamation process may look like. There were some recommendations made with regard to bringing in a certified forest agent and somebody that could help opine and prepare a plan for reclamation or some sort of responsible returning of that area back to what may have originally been there. I just want to give you a quick update on where we stand. I know we had asked for about a 60-day window. I'm not sure what the next hearing date is, but our intent is to comply before that next hearing date. I just wanted to give you some updates of where we are. We've had discussions with one of the landscape architects who is involved with the camp and actually is an alum at the camp, and she's opined on some recommendations. In addition, we've been in touch with B. Lang Associates, who had done some consulting work for us several years back when we had some environmental issues with the lake, when there were some algae blooms that had happened. We reached out to some of the principals there. I spoke with Taylor Strum, and he in turn was passing on a message to Mike, who did the original consultation with camp. And while they're not certified forestry professionals, they are certified erosion control consultants. They do work for the state, have done work for the state, and our hope or our I guess our next step here would be our alum Susie has already pulled together a plan. We're submitting that plan to both Taylor and Mike at B. Lang Associates. They're going to review that as well as the photographs that we've provided, schedule a site visit, come take a look at the site, take a look at what can be done on site, and we'll put together a letter of recommendation that we'd like to present to this board at the next hearing. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. There's some other follow-up items that we'll do internally with the principals at B. Lang to make sure that they have what they need, including access to the site and so on. So that is where we stand. Unless anybody has any further recommendations for us, I think we're in line or in position to be ready to make a recommendation at the next hearing.
Max, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I think I really just wanted them to be come back in front of the board just to get an update, but I'm looking forward to seeing what they put together. But that all sounds really great.
I don't know if everybody was, I think it was the last meeting where we discussed this. We were lifting the stop work order in contingency for them to develop a reforestation plan, as well as there was some damage done with a timber road that was built using a bunch of feller that was going through a wetland. So we had suggested using a forester, perhaps a landscape architect, combination thereof. And it looks like they're in the process of doing that. And it's not going to be an easy job. So does anybody have any comments or questions? So yeah, if you just keep us informed, I know I'd be interested. I'm sure Max would be, and we'll just go from there and move forward. So we wish you luck with it.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you for keeping us in touch.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So do we have representatives for 5 Juniper Hill Road?
Yes, we have Jason from Beatty and Watson.
Mm-hmm. How are you tonight, Jason?
Good. How are you guys
Good.
and gals? So the last time that we were, so after the last, after the last board, after the last time we were in front of your board, we went to the planning board. The public hearing was, we had the public hearing, it was closed. And so that's where we're at now. So I think you wanted some reassurance that the planning board was going to approve this, which Ron Gaynor was instructed to prepare a resolution, which I fully expect to be adopted at the planning board meeting of the 20, that's on the 20th. So we're kind of like, there's really not much to do at this point. I don't think that you can approve this until we have the planning board resolution adopted. Is that correct? Max, have you spoken with Ron?
Yeah, I spoke with Ron, and it sounds like we can move ahead with voting on a permit at this meeting due to the fact that it's a type 2 action. So that's already been, seeker's been closed. So the planning board's resolution process can go on, and we can next week. But I think you've met all of the conditions that we had asked for on this particular project. So I would ask the board to vote on the plans as they stand now. I think that's appropriate.
I think what would make sense, Jason, you want to just share your screen and just show, because I think there's some people that might not have seen the plan
Sure.
of what, so they can see from a plan what we're permitting. And then I'll ask for a motion to grant the permit if everybody is okay.
Okay. Can everybody see that?
Yep, we see your screen.
So we had some mitigation of the end of the driveway, the end of the proposed driveway. We have some pervious paver sections in the buffer for impervious to make that area impervious essentially. And then we also have reclamation of the lawn area off to the side of the existing and proposed house where we are where we're fixing up the area where the lawn and the existing lawn and cesspit is, where we are reclaiming that as landscaping with native plants and shrubs. And we've also the one thing that we did add was the deer fence to be monitored throughout the first 3-year period of planting and to maintain that deer fence to the deer control fence.
So those of you that have not been to the site, I mean, essentially it's an existing cottage in quite a state of disrepair. A good amount of the land around it going south, which would be bottom of the screen, and to the left going west has been previous, and as well as east has been previously disturbed. The most intact natural area is to the north, which is the top of the screen, which goes to a, I think it's an intermittent stream. Yes, Max, not perennial?
It's borderline.
Yeah.
I'd say probably.
And I think that was our area of greatest concern. And that's where the applicants have made improvements. So does anybody have any comments or questions? Okay, I'm going to take that as a no.
Actually, I do. Sorry, I
Okay.
just
No
wasn't
worries.
quick enough to the draw with my mute button. Jason, you mentioned, oh, we're redrawing. Okay. You mentioned impervious blocks, but I think you meant pervious in the wetland buffer. Is that what you meant? I just want
That's correct. So- Right, so we're proposing those
like a
those,
cobblestone kind of a thing,
well,
or
they're the HDPE little the baskets that you click together and then you fill them with pervious material.
okay.
You mean impervious material? Pervious, yes, pervious. So in other words,
Pervious material.
Pervious
pervious material. So you could
material.
you could
We
leave
want-
it as
we
is or
want it
plant
to
it.
Permeate.
It's gonna
Permeate.
permeate through the
Yep.
surface.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, there's a detail on the detail sheet for that. They're the same. We've proposed those before for
Mhm.
driveway. So
Yeah, it was just the switching of the words made me,
yeah, sorry.
Good catch.
that's okay. Just clarifying. So Andy, you needed a motion? If no one else had
yeah.
comments?
Yep. We're going to grant. So do I have a motion to grant a permit?
So move.
Second,
Second,
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, so Max, you'll take care of that?
Yep.
Okay. And Jason, I guess you're going to present the revised plans from Johnson and Rinderman on Mountain Brook Drive?
That's correct. So if I can share that,
Yep.
share that screen. Am I up now or I got to redo it?
No, you're up. You're up. You might want to blow it up another 20%.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, sorry. My headset was on mute. I couldn't figure out how to get it off. It's triple muted somehow. Sorry, because I was coughing. Just on that last one, that's fine. I agree. That was the garage one, right? That was the new garage that was going to be extended out to the front, right?
The last, what we just did, it was it's a very small cottage in a disturbed site near the river that they're building a much more substantial house.
You know what? I'm sorry. I didn't really explain though. I guess I should have explained the whole project, but basically there's an existing cottage that's partially in the wetland buffer. And that is to be, and also the cesspit for serving that cottage is also completely within the wetland buffer, within the intermittent stream buffer. So the permit is essentially to decommission the cesspit, demolish the cottage where a portion of the corner of the cottage is in the buffer. So then the entire house, the new house can be reconstructed completely without outside of the wetland buffer, as well as the septic system. The septic system is approved by the health department. And also included in that is the garage is completely outside of the buffer. We just need to extend the existing driveway a little bit in order to get to that garage that's outside of the buffer. So that's what the pervious pavers were about. So there's nothing being proposed in the buffer other than that small section of
Okay, I just want to make sure I was reading it right, and I'm
Yeah.
struggling with my headset trying to get it to
Okay.
work, so I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay,
this,
thank you.
this struck me at the site visit as a real win-win in terms of pulling everything out of the buffer, closing the old cesspit, getting rid of it, and a real plus all the way around.
Okay, no other comments. I just wanted to confirm, and I would vote yes, so.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's talk about Mountain Brook Drive. Only a few of us have been out there, so Jason, you might want to describe the project.
Okay, so this is this involves 2 lots. They're off of the end of Mountain Brook Drive. And we're basically, it's at the very end at the cul-de-sac. We are utilizing an existing, it's an existing road that goes to the dam. And we're utilizing that for much of the proposed driveway. To the extent that we can. And well, we're accessing basically the only developable portions of these lots is this small envelope outside of the wetland buffers. So that's where we're heading with this driveway over the existing driveway. I'm trying to get this centered here. So where we're at with the, so again, this is another one where the planning board, we've had the public hearing. The planning board, we've had the public hearing is closed, and now we're now we're sorting this out with the conservation board, with your board. So
correct me if I'm wrong, and Max, please dive in. There were basically 2 prongs to this. One is where the house is situated, and the other is we're using an existing travel way, but ultimately there will probably need to be a separate wetland permit or permits for some of the drainage that will be required for the driveway. True?
right. So much of the front portion of the driveway off of Mountain Brook will require a wetland permit.
Right.
But
essentially what you're looking for right now is more of the big picture, that we're comfortable that the existing travel way can be used, and where the modifications of where the house situation hasn't really changed, but the end of the driveway certainly has.
Right. So we've eliminated.
So you want to bring the drawing down a little bit?
Sure.
I don't know if everybody remembers this. Originally, I mean, you could probably just trace it, Jason, where roughly the driveway was coming and what you've done.
Okay, so the driveway continued along this existing traveled way towards the pond, and then kind of looped around the front of the house, and then looped around to the side and came in exactly the opposite side of the house where it's coming off now. Where it's coming up now, it was the exact opposite, around the side, around the well, and in this intermittent, in the buffer of this intermittent stream over to the west. So that has been completely eliminated. We have eliminated like 450 feet of driveway, which we previously had in the buffer. So the driveway no longer comes around the front of the house. We've eliminated not only the real point here, which was the initial concern, was this jug handle that came around the side. we've eliminated all that, all the driveway, all in front of the septic and in front of the house. And now it comes up the side of the, comes up the other side of the house along the existing route of the, along the route of the existing curtain drain. And that's a whole, that's a whole other story, but there's an existing curtain drain for the proposed septic system. This area that we have proposed, the newly proposed driveway is along that area that's already been cleared and grubbed of the trees in association with that, with the installation of that curtain drain. So I mean, I think we've really eliminated a lot of the disturbance that we previously had.
I agree. So just trace the small area where you are within the wetland buffer for us with your cursor so everybody can see that.
Well, we got this we're basically right here where it comes up.
Yep.
It makes that turn, and then other than that, we have this. There's an intermittent stream that comes down here and goes along the old. So that's another part of this. There's a lot going on with this, but there's an existing intermittent stream that comes here from the west. And it currently runs along the existing traveled way. So we are proposing to redirect that at some point. That intermittent stream came down and across and down and washed out directly down the hill. At some point, it was diverted so that it went down the existing, so that it went down whatever it is, a maintenance. I believe that this was the maintenance road for the dam, or the road that was used to construct the dam initially. So at some point it was diverted down and ran down the existing, this existing road and came down in this fashion here. So now we're relocating where it comes. We're basically relocating where this comes and runs down the hill.
I think, Jason, when you say
up here.
diverted, I don't think you meant that it was purposely diverted. It's just the water found the lower point. True?
Correct.
Yeah.
And throughout the years, there's been people, I don't know if it had anything to do with the off-roading that went on here, with just people trespassing, if it got diverted like that. Or I don't really know how exactly it happened, but clearly this intermittent, if you go out there, you can clearly see where this intermittent stream used to go just directly down the hill. So that's what we're trying to recreate that and have that be and restore that to how it used to be. And that way we can continue to use this existing, that really has to be done in order for us to use this existing. That's a key element for us to continue to use this existing this existing road. It's key to that plan. So
Jason,
yes.
when you say intermittent, how often is intermittent there? Is that like most of the time, anytime a rainstorm, or is it only in the spring or something like that?
Usually, I believe when we have a rainstorm, it will run.
Okay.
I would
pretty often then. It's just normally this is just the least path of resistance here. It's switched.
Correct.
But anytime it rains. Okay. I was just
That's
wondering.
what it is.
Sometimes it's only in the
I would
spring.
say it's seasonal. I would say it's seasonal.
Okay.
Maybe Max can. I've been out there a lot. I would say that it's mostly seasonal, but it does run whenever it rains.
Okay.
Can I have questions or comments from the board?
What would you do underneath the road here? What kind of culvert would you put there?
we're gonna put in a, I think what I have shown there now is a 4-foot diameter culvert. And we do have a, so basically we'll have a head wall here along the south end of the road, and put in a big culvert. And we do have a, we do have a wetland mitigation plan just for this area, as well as the whole site. So the landscape architect here is Susan Janechel, and she can go over her wetland mitigation plan and her restoration plan for we have a plan for the whole site. So if there's no other questions with regard to the overall what we're doing here, I can hand it off to her, and she can go over her restoration plan.
I think that would be a good idea unless anybody on the board or Max has any comments or questions.
No, thank you for considering moving the driveway the way you did. I think that really works out well. I really didn't like the other designs.
Yeah, ditto. I think you did a great job with that,
Yeah.
Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a much better. I think this is the way to go. So
yeah.
So Jason, do you have the plans there, or should I share my screen?
oh, I can bring up
Why
your
don't you do
plan.
that?
So here is.
But why don't we start with the easy part, which is the
Okay.
the larger area there?
Okay.
So just to reiterate, the shifting of the driveway. By the way, I'm Susan Janechel. I might have met you guys years ago. You might remember my name from years past. But I'm working with Scott and with Jason on the ecological restoration plan and the landscape plan moving forward. But as you notice, the total area of disturbance is reduced, as well as the area of disturbance within the wetland buffer, and of course the length of the driveway. So we redid the planting plan in the main area near the house, and then we also took a look at what was happening along the roadway. You'll notice that there are 4 different types of seating for different types of conditions on the site. All of them are native seating, using the philosophy that putting in a large variety of native seating will allow the appropriate plant that suits the conditions to come up, plus some more typical landscape plants, the size of trees and shrubs that you would see in a non-wooded, non-restoration plan. But really more importantly, I think for the purposes of this meeting, is the area that we were just talking about, which is that stream, the realignment of the intermittent stream down here. So as Jason was saying, currently it goes along the roadway, and it's going to be redirected into a culvert that's going to go under the new roadway. And you see the gray wall, head wall there. That's the head wall that is going to be where the culvert goes through. So uphill from the culvert is on the bottom side here. And what we did is we created sort of a stepping pool to allow to reduce the velocity when the water does flow. When it does rain, when we have heavy rains and floods, we want to keep the erosion to a minimum by creating these stepping pools, allowing the sediment to fall before going to the next level down, planting it, seeding it around the areas of the highest flow, and then at the upper levels, putting in some shrubs and understory trees that are appropriate for woodland landscape, native to the region, deer resistant. Even though they're going to be deer resistant, we are putting a deer fence around this area that will be maintained for at least 3 years to allow the plants to have the ability to establish in this new setting. And I think this really is even more than creates a nice little scene and a nice little area of you know, of planting and a water flow. You know, opening up this little area is sort of like making sort of the silver lining is that really we'll get a little bit more diversity in this area. There's a real solid, very homogeneous kind of cover of trees in this area. So I think this is going to give another, you know, little piece of habitat for the little critters that might be looking for something like this in the area. So yeah, so if you zoom out a little bit, Jason, you see the rest of the roadway and really just addressing the different conditions along the roadway where there'll be opportunities for establishment of native plant materials in different situations. Some areas a little bit more wet, some areas planted with more like meadow type of plantings and other more erosion control plantings, seed mix. And that's about it. I think the one other thing that we wanted to talk to you about, just to give a little bit of background, we're sort of doing this a little bit backwards. Actually, do you want to ask me some questions now? Or do you want to have that last little piece and then we could talk about everything?
Why don't you do the last little piece? and
Okay,
we can
so
backtrack.
Scott, why don't you just talk about the overall site? We're sort of zooming out a little bit just to explain, you know, how we got to this place in general.
Sure. Jason, okay, great. So Max had suggested that we kind of give a big overview because we keep saying there's 50 acres, but it's a very small lot or very small building area that we can build on. So I just wanted to give the board an opportunity to kind of really truly understand all the parcels that are involved, because it's kind of a complicated thing. In May of 2019, we purchased 6 parcels. There's 3 of them that are in Putnam County, and there's right through the center of the pond is the county line. And so there's 3 parcels that are also in Dutchess County. It's around just under 20 acres in Putnam and just over 30 acres in Dutchess. So here's Mountain Brook Drive coming up here. And then we have parcel 1, 2, and 3 that are located in Putnam County, and 4, 5, and 6 are located in Dutchess County. And if you go to the next slide, Jason, I wanted to let you know that we've been talking to New York State and Linda Cooper, New York State Parks, since we started, you know, negotiating for the property, because we really felt that we needed to kind of have a conversation with them about the Hudson Highlands State Park. Just to let you know what's around this, around the property is all around this area is Hudson Highlands State Park, owned by New York State. All around this parcel here, parcels 1 and 2, is property that was purchased by Scenic Hudson about the same time we purchased these 6 parcels. And that's an entity called Slope Lines LLC. And we've been working with Seth McKee, talking to him about that. But so back in October, just a couple months ago, we sold 15.94 acres to New York State. That's parcel 6. And so that will now become a part of the Hudson Highlands State Park. And then we've been talking to them also about transferring title to parcel number 5, which is another 5.88 acres to New York State Parks. And that's going to take a little bit longer because it has different title requirements. So we anticipate that transfer taking place by 2024, hopefully. I also wanted to point out that the buildable area, or the footprint where we could build, is less than an acre. It's about 3/4 of an acre, and it's indicated in this this hatched area on the lower left. And that's the area that we really focus on with Jason's drawings that shows where the driveway has now been changed. We go to the next slide. Also, just as another big overview, I wanted to show where these existing travelways are on the property. There's Mountain Brook Drive comes up here, and then right at the end of the cul-de-sac, you'll see a gate, and then there's a gravel road that goes up here, and that's on the Scenic Hudson property. And then it takes a right, and it goes down towards our property. And along here, all along here, is this existing travelway that we believe was the old kind of maintenance road or access road to the reservoir up here. And what we want to do is really, you know, as Jason explained, is we want to use as much of that existing roadway as possible, so we have as little intervention in the natural landscape as possible. This again is the buildable area, and it's surrounded by the wetland setback, which you can see in this dashed line here. That's just to give you a big overview. And the next slide will show kind of what we're trying to do in terms of, oh, I'm sorry, this is the curtain drain that was installed. So Conservation Board gave us approval to install the curtain drain in June of 2020, and it's 174 feet long. It goes right through the middle of the site and then comes down here. And when we first bought the property, we didn't really kind of understand that it was going to work at all. And great news is that it is successful, and we did receive the septic plan approval from the DOH in last October of 2021. So this is where the curtain drain is located in relationship to the overall parcels. And again, these are the 3 parcels that are in Philipstown. And then, the other thing I wanted to mention is, if you go back, I'm sorry, Jason. So when we first bought the property, we were talking to Seth McKee at Scenic Hudson. We asked them if we could do an access easement. They gave us temporary access easements to construct the curtain drain, and we wanted to know if they would be willing to do a permanent access easement, because it would be so much easier and there'd be so much less disruption to the property if we could just follow these existing roads. And they said emphatically no, that they didn't want to have any encumbrances on their property. When they purchased the property, they didn't want to have any encumbrances for whatever future purposes they want to do with the site. So that was a question that we had for them, and that's a question that that they did say no to. So that's why we now have to go back and try to connect to the existing travelway. And then if we go to the next slide. So this really just shows the diagram. This is the red line here is the existing, is a new driveway that connects to this existing travelway that comes along here, the existing travelway. And then now, instead of going along here and kind of backing around like we were talking about, it now just flips right along the property line and goes into the center of the site based on our meeting with our on-site meeting with Jan and with Andy, and also the Conservation Board's input last month. And that's it.
Okay, thank you. Max, would you like to talk about this at all?
Yeah, no, I really, in corresponding with the applicant, really just wanted them to highlight the restoration plan or the mitigation plan that they were establishing for the site. I think they addressed the board's concerns with the positioning of the driveway. But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's that was really what I was hoping that they would highlight, and then also exemplify the fact that it's the parcels they own are contiguous to parks, and there's kind of a larger story behind the complete ownership of all the parcels and kind of what their aim is. So, and for you all to take that into consideration in terms of making a decision about the plans as they stand in front of you now. The only real questions I have in terms of the mitigation plan are what the board would require if they're comfortable with this in terms of monitoring and reporting and replanting to make sure that those areas are maintained in the future. I think typically we've done a 5-year reporting cycle on similar projects, or if there were any concerns the board saw with the planting plan, if they had any, I guess, concerns with planting sizes, or if those were specified in these plans, if they can go into, if the applicants can go into that maybe a little bit more. But I think this is what should be highlighted in terms of how they are intending on mitigating the impacts to the buffer where they're occurring.
Comments from the board or questions?
I'd like to just make a disclosure for, just for the record. My employer is Hudson Highlands Fjord Trail, which is a supporting organization of Scenic Hudson, the adjacent landowner. So I just want to make sure that everyone understands that. And if there is a desire for me to recuse myself, I will do so. But I just wanted that to be out there in case.
Does anybody see that as an issue? I don't on this particular project. Right.
Okay.
So
I
Max,
just have a question, Andy, before you
Sure.
go on.
Mhm.
I don't know if I missed it with the house. Are there any type of rain gardens around that would get then somehow help to mitigate the water flow and things like that? I don't remember if we had that kind of conversation about that property there, right? And especially since that I never realized about the drain that they put in, that was, mentioned before. So, is there an opportunity that water flowing from the house should go into that drain? I think there's just a little bit more about the water flow around the house, given that there was a curtain drain right through the center of it that we might want to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, well, there is a green roof proposed.
Right, I remember that, yeah. But there's still
Um,
water comes off of those, I mean, they don't absorb everything.
Right, we don't have any additional stormwater measures proposed, just due to the fact that there's a relatively high groundwater table there. That's why we had the curtain drain. I mean, we can, I
Right.
believe we could, there is some opportunity for us to incorporate some possibly some rain gardens, something at the surface. We could propose something
I mean,
like that.
I mean, that's what made me, Jason, think about it when, I did, either I missed it or I didn't realize about that drain in the middle and how wet that was. And I never was able to go to the site, unfortunately. But, I think since water is an issue in this site, that maybe a more comprehensive look at that water flowing off of the roof and things like that, the extra overflow from the green roof and other areas would be helpful. I think the applicants would benefit from that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I think we would like to keep unfiltered water out of the pond. Max, are we at a point now that we would begin to contemplate permitting this, or are we still going back to the planning board?
I think the planning board is, Jason can comment on this too, but they're pretty much all set and they're waiting for our approvals at this point.
Right. So this is similar, like this is similar to the Santelises in Arnaud, where the public hearing has been closed. The only difference here is that Ron has not been instructed, or I'm sorry, he has been instructed to he has been instructed to prepare a resolution. If we don't come back with a conservation board permit on the 20th, then they're not gonna act on it.
Okay, so here I'm going to make my comments then. I do agree with Rob on the rain garden, but that could be a contingency. Where I'm a little uncomfortable is that to permit we'll call it the diversion of the stream, I think we need far more of a construction narrative and what you're doing once you pass over the road. I mean, it looks to me like what you're proposing and the what's the word I want to use it? The restoration landscape plan makes sense. But I know that we looked at where you're going to go. I won't call it quite a cascade or a waterfall, but it is steep. And that's not really detailed.
Right.
Because I don't think you can just, particularly dealing with, these days we have 100-year storms all the time. I don't know what water flow would look like going down that ravine and going further. It would be on the other side of the existing stream, which is not perennial, that comes from that little pond reservoir, if you will. On the far side, there have been some landslides. So to me, I think it really begs that there is a plan of, what you're doing. How are you slowing the velocity of the water, or how are you making a decent channel? Am I making sense? I mean, Max, would you weigh into? Because you walked down there with myself as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to just hear from Jason's perspective, the engine, what the thought was behind engineering that area the way that they did with the, I think when we were out there, we were talking about essentially maintaining a natural intermittent stream flow and look to that area as it went under the road and then back down the historic channel, I guess you would call it, where it would connect to the larger perennial stream. I think the restoration plan looks good. There's definitely a lot of diversity being planted in that area. But yeah, I think if we can just dive a little bit deeper into that portion of the project, I'd like more information on that too.
So the question for the board and you, Max, becomes, do we put off permitting this until we see that, or are we comfortable having it as a contingency that there needs to be a plan for once the water leaves the driveway? What is the ravine going to look like? What type of engineering, if any, is going to be done? And it might be as simple as just, moving some boulders and trying to make sure there's a natural ravine that works. How does everybody feel about this?
If I just may, I believe when we met out there, we had agreed that the existing ravine was largely surface rock, and it was going to be stable. It was going to be more stable than the other washout ravine area, and that we weren't going to do anything there. So I mean, that's my recollection, that we were going to avoid going down that literal slippery slope.
Yeah, I mean, my
So,
recollection.
That's all rock there? That's all rock, Andy?
It's largely surface
Predominantly,
rock.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, my recollection is less would be more, but I
Okay.
do think, so as I said, if everybody's comfortable, I do think there needs to be a plan on, that we have on record. I mean, if the board and Max are comfortable voting on a permit with, that is one of the contingencies, I personally don't have a problem with it, but I'd like to hear from everybody else on that.
I'm comfortable with that.
I mean, because I do believe that getting the water off what will become their driveway, even if somebody wasn't building a house right now, it would be a great improvement to the site. This is just one of these roads that, was never maintained, probably never built properly, and it's just slowly making a mess.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we
Andy,
can
go
trust
ahead.
Max. I'm sorry, Jan.
Jen?
No, I was going to say, I agree. I've been to the site 2 times. It's a difficult site. I think the applicants have done everything we've asked. I'd be comfortable voting tonight for a conditional permit with some sort of maintenance agreement and periodic, say, annual reporting, that all of the work they're going to do not only is done and done properly, but maintained to get it established. But I think the first site visit, if I recall correctly, was the last site visit the board did pre-COVID 2 years ago. So I think I'd be comfortable voting and letting them move forward.
Okay, so that's one contingency. A second contingency is some plan for what's happening once the water goes into that ravine.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Right? Which, Jason, less can be more in this case, but I think
Okay.
we need something
Okay.
documenting in case there ends up being a problem. Because it seems like there's more soil there than I'm used to in most of Philipstown, looking at the other side of the main stream. Does anybody else have any contingencies? And Max, please weigh in.
I have
I think
just
if
a
we could just
comment or a
say-
quick,
Sorry, Bob, go ahead.
oh, no problem. So I was just wondering what's going to happen to the maintenance road that the stream was going on? Or are you going to do some type of remediation with that, or like, once you move the stream from washing down it, the driveway is gonna go there, but there's, if I recall correctly, there was some spots there that were not part of that were gonna be washed, that currently the stream runs down. Whatever's not driveway, is that gonna be like remediated or?
No, so there'll be this little section down in the corner.
I'm sorry, maybe I
You wanna
missed it on
bring
the
it up?
plan and maybe it's all more,
Yeah.
maybe it's all the driveway. I thought there was a whole section that wasn't part of the driveway, but maybe I missed it.
No, it's the whole, we're utilizing the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Even where it turned off though, then I thought there was a whole section like from where the turn went. And then it
Want
kind
to
of
bring
like
it up
dead
for a
ended.
second? What would probably help Rob would be one of the property maps rather than the detailed drawing.
Okay, yeah. Apology, I didn't get to go to that site, so.
You know what I'm talking about, Jason?
Yep.
Because there are other, both on their property and the adjacent property, there are old woods roads that sort of weave in and out, and I think have been used by, unfortunately, by ATVs in the past too, which hasn't helped anything.
Yeah, so you have this purple dotted line here. This is,
You're not sharing your screen.
Seeing it.
oh. Okay.
While Jason's pulling that up, I do want to compliment Susan on her planting plan and design. I think it's really inspired and thorough.
It's extraordinary.
I agree.
Yeah, she did a great job. So am I sharing my screen now?
Yeah,
Yes,
now
you're
you are.
sharing your
So
screen.
we got this purple dash line here that goes all the way through this 5.92 acre lot and then comes up and it goes around the house site. This upper one here, that's how we always, that's generally how when we go in, that's the way we go. That's not going to be, we're not going to be able to use that. So basically, so you got this portion here. We're not, that's just, we got this portion here that goes around the proposed house site. That's just going to be replanted as part of the mitigation plan, and that goes away. So
Okay, so that was one part, and
Yeah.
then this other part on the, on the, east side there.
and then on the east side here, that's just a little
Yeah.
tail. That's just gonna remain like it is. That's gonna be untouched.
Okay.
That-
Just
that-
maybe
well,
consider it, consider like putting something there, just wanted to prevent people from driving on it. I even during the construction, people might drive ATVs and stuff like that in there. I'm just saying, just maybe
that is
think about it.
we could put something there, but we could put that's a pot, we could do that. But right now, the water, this tail portion here that there's no water running over that. It's just a dry, it's
Okay.
just a dry roadbed. But we can certainly, it can't hurt to put something there to prevent.
Yeah, just
Jason.
consider that anyway. That's all.
Trespassing.
That's
If I could
my
just
main
jump-
point.
If I could just jump in, the Susan's plan has something right there where that continues, where the road connects back up and the old road continues. There's plantings that kind
Okay.
of end that roadway, so you can't continue down there if you're on an ATV or anything like that.
Okay.
We have other comments?
Could you
So
just jump back to the head wall and the culvert that's going to be under the driveway? And I guess I would just want to have a better picture of what that area is going to be constructed to look like. What it would take to get it to what the plan is calling for from a construction standpoint.
So this area in here, Max?
Yeah. Are you going to be proposing to excavate those pools? Like, what are the details to create that scenario?
There's going to be a little bit of excavation in order to get down into this and get this culvert in. But other than that, I mean, we don't have proposed, you know, we're back on like right around in this area here. I would anticipate we're going to be about at grade, but we do need to get down in order to get this culvert in. So and to get these pools in.
Okay, so the idea would be to create perennial pools in that area that would be planted around something like vernal pools that are stepping down towards that the culvert. Is that
Correct?
I don't know if Susan
Right.
can jump in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, and so those would need to be excavated. I mean, the only thing, I mean, I guess we can have this conversation offline if the board wants to do it that way. But the only thing I would maybe want to impose is that all this excavation is done while the streams aren't running. So you know, that site is pretty much the water just kind of sheet flows over that whole area. So it'd be definitely if we could figure out the construction sequencing in this area and during the road construction, that would be ideal. And then figure out you know, any sort of protective measures to create those pools and planting areas in the future. I think all of that needs to be detailed, but those are the concerns that I kind of have. And I'm just saying them now in front of the board, but I think we can figure them out.
Oh, that makes sense. So do we want to make that also as a contingency? Or you feel that can be worked out after seeing the plans? Max?
Yeah, I think if we can come up with a construction sequence and a plan for this area to reach this end goal, I think if we can work those logistics out, that makes sense. That would be.
Okay, so it looks like we have 4 items. We have that, potentially the addition of a rain garden or something to divert flow from the green roofs into the pond. 3 was a maintenance agreement. We'll call it not so much a maintenance agreement, what do we want to call it? So an agreement.
Monitoring plan.
Monitoring.
Yeah, for the plantings. And lastly, what type of construction or not is going to be done once the water goes through the culvert and into the ravine. So I think those are our 4 contingencies. If everybody is good with that, and there are no more comments, does somebody want to make a motion to grant a permit?
So move.
Do I have a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for coming in.
So I
Show
think the
is an eye
easiest
too,
way to
sorry.
proceed.
I had to step out for a second.
I think the easiest way to proceed is I'll draft a memo just stating that we approved a conditional permit, but then we should for the planning board, and then I'll talk. Well, I'll probably have to have a meeting or 2 with Jason and Susan before I can write the permits.
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Hopefully
But I
they
think
heard that.
Jason, I think your client will be on their way for what you need with the planning board right now.
I think that'll do it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yep. Thank you.
great. Thank you. Okay, let's move on to lot 3 on Rockwall Road in Cold Spring.
Hi, everybody. This is Vinny Sickles from River Architects, representing Jonathan and Anna Pierce. The other week we had our first site visit. Andy and Max and Jan were able to attend. I think our main concerns were we basically walked the existing kind of traveled way there on the site and looked at the existing culverts that are currently putting water from Rockwall Road onto our site, and then also the existing culverts that are located under the at the 2 locations on the existing kind of traveled way there. Basically, we're looking to restore the 2 culverts to allow the water to continue in its kind of natural course across the driveway at the lower portion into the kind of larger wetlands area that exists there. We submitted for this meeting the surveyed flagging that was done by Max. Previously, our first meeting, we just submitted a kind of a draft based on his kind of sketch of the area. But this map shows the survey locations of the wetlands, and our other the big item we wanted to review was by redirecting the water across the driveway via restored culvert pipe. We would be basically removing some of the kind of storm and washout to the lower flat portion that kind of follows that traveled way where we are planning to put the septic field. So by redirecting that water away from that area, it would provide us, allow that area to dry out some more and allow us to have our septic field located in that location. If you want, I can share my screen. We can talk about it.
Yes,
Or how
please do.
Sure. Everybody see that okay?
Yep.
All right, so this was the map that was prepared by Jason's team. And this
Not
kind of
seeing the
hatch.
map.
I'm not seeing a map.
You're not seeing the map?
No, we're seeing your screen, but we're seeing the agenda.
Oh, hang
You
on one
have to
second.
switch the window.
Screen 1. Hang on, let's try this again here. Here we go, let's try that. How's that?
Same thing. Up there you go.
Got it?
Yep.
Okay,
We're
great.
good.
So yes, this is the map that Jason's team prepared for us, showing the survey locations of the wetlands area. And then this hatched portion down the center of the lot is the kind of existing road that was installed at some point in the past. There's 2 culverts that currently cross, both 12 inches. One's kind of located here at the turn, and the lower one that takes the majority of the water is kind of located in this portion of the site here, and has currently been silted over from the water that's coming down from the upper 2 culvert pipes that come off of Rockland Road, taking water across the road from 2 swales and then into these kind of 2 paths down that kind of converge here at this lower portion of the site. And then our proposal is basically using this kind of raised kind of flat area as the house location, which would be located within the buffer of the wetlands area. This lower portion here is the kind of larger, more kind of perennial wetlands. And then these kind of courses down the hillside here kind of just basically run kind of after heavy rains. This one takes a bit more water off of the road, and the ones kind of farther up the hill kind of dry out in between rains, it seems so far.
Vinny, do you have the shot of the, or do you have the map with the steep slopes on it so they can see
Yep,
what we're
yeah,
dealing with as
Yeah,
far as?
getting down to that one
Yeah,
next
okay.
here. So the crosshatch areas here are the steep slopes that we're also kind of trying to navigate here as well. So this current traveled way that we're trying to reutilize for our current driveway approach kind of basically kind of sort of dodges between the kind of runoff from a Rockland Road and also avoids the kind of steep slope areas. So we have a higher steep slope here at the top of the driveway and one in the middle that we're kind of going between, and then kind of crossing. This area has kind of already been graded a bit for the existing access ways. You can see the topos are kind of adjusted here. And then basically we kind of come up to this kind of flat portion for the garage, and then the house will be located at this portion. Continuing further down the page. So this is our proposed plan that was submitted. So we are locating let me zoom in a little bit. There we go. Locating the residence, like I said, up on the kind of flatter portion here, just inside you can see here, this is where the buffer crosses the building site we're proposing. And then the garage, 2-car garage, located between the outside of the steep slopes and just inside the buffer area. And then this kind of line at the top of the site here, this is the buffer taking the adjusted wetlands area that's been removed, that's currently kind of flows out into this area here. So this is the culvert that we're proposing to restore, and we'd have a protected kind of inflow and outflow, taking the water from these 2 kind of paths down the hill across the driveway and then into this existing kind of more kind of perennial wetlands area at the bottom of the page here. I have one more view we can show that's has a little bit more color on it. Might be a little bit easier to see, just for printing purposes. So this is again the same information, just kind of showing the steep slopes in color here, and then the wetlands area shown in blue. And then based on our conversations, we haven't submitted this drawing yet, but basically we're showing the replaced culvert pipes in red here across the driveway. And then
I don't think we're seeing the map that you're talking about. This is black and white.
saying us. There
Can
we
you
go.
just scroll one more? Am I wrong?
Here is it. Is that better now?
There you go.
All right. Sorry, the icons are pretty tiny when I'm switching my monitors here. Okay, here we go. All right. Yes, so yeah, steep slopes are in yellow. We're kind of locating the house and these disturbed areas between the steep slopes and the wetlands on this kind of raised level area in the middle. And then this kind of checkered area is the flagged portion of the wetlands we were trying to capture and take across the driveway with this replaced culvert pipe down here at the lower portion of the driveway. And then based on our conversations on site, we are proposing to basically some enhanced plantings where the protected outflow from the culvert kind of feeds into this wetlands area. And then also establishing some more protection plantings on the kind of bank leading down to this larger wetlands area. And then we also were including kind of two critter crossing culvert pipes kind of adjacent to those for access. And then on the down slope of the house, outside of the steep slopes and just outside the wetlands buffer, we were looking at a rain garden to take the any runoff from the roof and footing drains down to the lower portion of the site. And then this drawing here, based on our conversations on site with Jason, the only change from the previous submitted drawings is we were pulling the driveway a little bit further up the hill, still avoiding the steep slopes, but basically this was putting the driveway to the south of the existing culvert pipe to not have to kind of extend this culvert and redirect it around the driveway. So the current access way kind of travels basically where this kind of flagged area was at the top of the hill. So basically we're kind of pulling the restored access out of that area to the south of the existing culvert and between the steep slopes to provide the new access point up to Rockland Road.
Jason, do you have any comments?
No, I mean,
Okay.
that's pretty much it. I just wanted to, maybe it would be helpful if Max just kind of,
Yes, you took the words out of my mouth.
yeah, just kind of go over the function of these wetlands and you know.
Sure. Yeah, I think, well, one of the biggest things that I think stood out to us on the site visit was that there are these intermittent streams that are basically feeding this wetland that that Vinny was pointing out. And over the years, they had been hydrologically connected by some culverts that failed, and essentially were overflowing into the area. And those intermittent streams were overflowing into the area that they're proposing to put their septic fields in. Ultimately, I think when we were out on the site, it was concluded that the board members felt that this would be a net positive to reestablish the hydrologic connection to that larger wetland area, and ultimately allow the potential use of the northern portion of the property, and provide more overall net benefit to adding to a habitat feature that should be there for that wetland, which eventually does connect to a larger, more perennial stream to the south. One of the concerns that I had was just making sure that connection, that culvert closer to the septic fields, that it was sized correctly, and that that I was hoping that you guys would just describe what was going to be intended for that area to ensure that it wouldn't overflow and then compromise your fields below in the future. So I was hoping that maybe you could go into that a little bit more, and then potentially discuss a little bit about what the wildlife crossings would look like, and what your thoughts were or ideas for that too. Was interesting to me.
Let me just pan up a little bit here. Yeah, so I think we had talked like a 2-foot diameter culvert pipe for this area, but Jason would have to do some calculations to confirm that that's an adequate size. And then as far as any kind of, this was inundated with a larger storm. We were also looking at basically providing like a backup swale that would kind of follow the driveway and you basically take any kind of runoff out and around the septic fields. That area won't become compromised if there is a, larger than design storm in the future. And then
Why wouldn't you put a larger culvert in there just so that you don't have to completely worry about that?
I mean, I guess there's always the concern of, if there's snow and then like our heavy rain before the snow is melted, it could kind of clog the culvert system up. And then also, I guess leave it
Well,
to Jason to kind of-
larger would be less likely, no?
Yeah, I mean, we'll look at one large culvert. There's plenty of there's plenty of vertical head there, so there's plenty of room to get in a large culvert. So, we'll dig that culvert back out, the inlet, and do a similar thing that we did for the previous project on Mountain Brook. Just dig it down and provide some stabilization at the inlet and outlet, and also provide some enhancements to the wetland buffer, or the actual wetlands on the downslope side.
I'm just thinking, since it's obviously packing, why risk it? So
Yeah.
I have,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, whoops. I have a question about this. Unfortunately, I apologize, I wasn't able to make a site visit here, but this feather of a wetland that kind of, the top of it is where it says soil stockpile,
This portion?
that weird little feather. So that's basically, I'm not quite clear on the engineering solution. That's just going away. Is that the idea, or it's draining?
It's currently like a bunch of washout and runoff sediment from where this culvert's silted over.
So
Okay.
basically in the area that at the end of where the turnaround there is, at the end of the driveway, the soil is very permeable. And the water course kind of runs down the side of the hill there, along the side of the existing, and it just peters out, and it just absorbs into the ground, and it just goes away. So if we can just it doesn't go anywhere, and maybe Max can speak to this. It doesn't go anywhere after it peters out. It just absorbs into the ground. Once this area, once it flattens out, it just absorbs into the ground.
Yeah, MJ, I think historically, before the Woods Road was put in place, the drainage off that hillside would have just naturally flowed towards across the road and then down towards that larger wetland area. But since that culvert failed, and then the road essentially is creating a berm, it's pushing the termination of those intermittent water courses towards the north.
So it's just kind of backing up. Is that what's
Yes,
happening?
That's
It's backing
exactly,
up.
yep.
Okay. All right,
I mean,
that
this-
makes sense to me. I'm looking at it and I'm going, how on earth is this happening? Okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no, when I was out there, it was, different than the plan. I was having the same problem. But once I was out there, this old road, when they built the subdivision, it's acting as a berm, and it's just basically disrupted the wetland. And this would basically the water flow, and this would redirect the water flow properly with really doing very little. And the wetland that's there, I think it would help it, and then it drains into a small stream.
Understood. Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
Do you have a construction erosion and sediment control plan that outlines where silt fence will be placed, and kind of a construction sequence for all the aspects of the project? Do we have that?
Not yet. We're kind of waiting for the board's kind of feedback on this discussion tonight to move forward with the engineering and design of that.
we were kind of looking for a little bit of assurance that we could move forward with this plan, and then we can size the culverts. We can do the erosion and sediment control plan. I can complete the soil testing in that proposed in the septic area that we have proposed. I can finish the testing there. I didn't want to go through all that if there was things that we needed to incorporate.
Yeah,
In
understood.
the process. I didn't want to go all out right off the bat. So
Understood. So do I have any other comments or questions from the board?
I mean, do the board members want to look at how the house layout, the design of the footprint? Is there any comments on the side, like the deck? I'm looking at the deck, walkways, things like that.
I mean, the more we can move it out of the wetland buffer, the better. But I think at the same time, what we might be fighting is how close are we going to get to the steep slope and thus have a drainage problem that would need to be engineered.
Do you have any blow-ups of the house? I mean, other than this schematic here, do you have anything a little bit more descriptive as to what it would look like in relation to the property around it?
Yeah, actually, I mean, like actual how the floor plans.
Yeah.
Yeah, hang on one second. So this is the proposed first floor of the house. Basically, well, here's the orientation. So north is kind of on a diagonal off to the right, and then the garage is located off to the top right corner of this as well. And then the stone wall is basically about 10 or so feet off the edge of the deck that kind of marks the kind of break line of the slope down to the wetlands.
Okay. And this is this part out here where the little steps are and it says Gable Ridge, that's all a deck?
This is a raised deck. Yep, that's right.
And is there another deck on the other side, or?
There's a small entry port. You kind of see there's a small entry porch in this area going off to the driveway.
And what does that look like? Is that like a deck type of thing, or is it like or pavers or?
This would be a slab on grade under the porch
Slab, okay.
with a roof. Yeah, this would be roofed over this porch. This is open deck, gapped, boards, and then this is a roofed over porch with a impervious surface.
Okay, and what about drainage? Do you have any type of plans for drainage off of the property here?
Yeah, we're taking the footing drains and the leader drains down to a rain garden located on the downslope away from the house.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I think what the applicants are asking for right now is, they're not asking for a permit yet because we need a lot more information and planning. Are we comfortable with these two structures as well as some other improvements infringing upon the wetland buffer? It is a very, very constrained site.
I would like to mention that I'm not crazy about that. Is that a garage? I'm assuming that detached garage
That's correct.
at the top of the, I'm not crazy about that kind of, if there's a way that we could, if that could be tucked in more. I know that it's a very constrained site, but.
And it's a big garage.
It's a really big garage, and it looks like a big driveway scale wise. It feels like there's not really a need to push in as much as it is. It feels a little considering this, the constraints of the site, it feels like overkill.
What do you mean by pushing? Which way would you want to shift it?
Well, I'd want to move it so that it wasn't infringing on the wetland. Oh, God. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're
Where
trying
could
to
you push
avoid
it?
this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Andy, my reaction was this, like an increasing number of sites we're looking at, is a very challenging site with a lot of constraints from different issues. And I personally thought, given the difficulty of the site, they did what seemed to me like a good job of trying to thread the needle. It's not perfect, but the site isn't perfect. So while the intrusion on the wetland buffer always bothers me, I think all things considered, this would be a net improvement in terms of correcting some fairly serious problems that have developed there, particularly related to things like the failure of the culvert.
But do we think that I mean, I agree with you, Jan, for necessary structures like a family residence, right? But do we think that an oversized garage is a necessary structure? We've often spoken about how, you know, there are almost like two tiers of priority in terms of allowing incursion into the wetland buffer. And that first tier is for systems related to a household residence or a residence itself, if there's no other place to build it. That's the second tier would be things like garages, guest houses, pools, tennis courts, things like that, that are not necessary, right, for a homeowner to, or a landowner to, you know, enjoy the use of their property, their private property. So I just wonder how everybody else feels about that. I'm still not crazy about having this detached garage straddle the wetland buffer. I know there's no other place to put it, but that begs the question, does it need to exist?
Do I have other
Hi,
comments?
may I, to represent our client, my name is Ju Hee, the founding principal here at River Architects. And the garage, we had actually discussed this with our client about the garage. I mean, from the early process, design process, I know it would be more convenient for our clients if the garage was attached to the house. And I think it was the zoning resolution that kind of pushed us garage as a detached garage. And for our clients, the garage is necessary for them for, you know, storing their car out of snow, and, you know, maybe have a little bit of workshop, because our clients are looking to retire in this community. It's not a weekend home, and it's a very modest house. And so they just happen to purchase a rather challenging site, because as we all know, the land available in Philipstown are limited, and this just happens to come on the market when they were looking. And when we look at the site, I mean, they are inheriting their neighbors' stormwater, if you say it more succinctly, and they're not going to ask their neighbors to redirect the stormwater off of their property. They're trying to be neighborly and just to figure out how to work with the site that they have purchased. So, and one thing is that I know the site map shows a lot of colors and lines and a lot of text, but when you walk the site, it isn't as terrible as it looks, at least, you know, in my opinion, in my professional opinion. The yes, the road that exists, we inherited that, but I think there's a good solution. And the proposed location is actually, you know, very dry. Aside from that stormwater that needs to be redirected, you know, under the culvert, under the roadway. I think the proposed location is a very small niche where we can locate a structure, and the stone wall that is running alongside the proposed house also creates a good buffer, you know, against that low valley. So considering that our client purchased a rather challenging site, I think we do have a small chance of opportunity to make it happen for them. And so going back to the garage, they said they had recently told us that they would really need a garage, you know, to make it more useful. You know, it's not an accessory, it's not a pool house. We're not asking for, you know, accessory apartment on the above. It's just a very basic garage with possible, you know, wood shop for our retired client to have a little bit of enjoyment. It's nothing excessive.
And also part of our design for the garage roof is the it's like kind of a A-B. So we have a longer slope on the southern side of the garage. And after the clearing is done for the house, it would kind of allow this southern roof some additional exposure to allow for them to have a solar array oriented here on the south side of the roof.
Are they
So-
planning a solar array? Is that part of the design?
It's for the for the southern side of the garage roof. That would be a solar array to hopefully get to a net zero on the house, you know, exposure permitting.
Well, from the standpoint, I mean, we get into this discussion about what's necessary and then put it into the buffer. But from the standpoint of like, well, this site is going to be disturbed here. They're going to be cleaning up the road here and building the house and everything. When the garage is actually there with the corner in the wetlands buffer, what is the issue from the standpoint of what is the detriment to the local environmental flora and everything, from the standpoint of a garage where we've already, you know, putting in a driveway here and a house and everything. I mean, you're already disturbing this site. You're already putting in this type of you know, structures that weren't there before. So I'm just kind of thinking about to the comment that I've had in several of the other meetings is like, you know, well, so like what mitigations are fit for purpose for putting in a structure like that, like the long-term effect in the local area here, you know, what is that to the landscape, to the wildlife, to the flow of creatures and things like that, and is a mitigation like a solar array on the top of that reasonable, plus some of the other things that the site is tried to incorporate. I'm just trying to get that balance as we come at more and more with this type of discussion of, you know, do you put that there? Do you put this here? We're not going to approve it because it's not a necessary structure. But you know, I think we just have to come up with a way of looking at what the appropriate kind of mitigations are for something that's put into the buffer that, you know, maybe we wouldn't normally want to have there, but we're making up for it in other ways. You know, whether that's plantings or rain gardens or solar arrays or green roofs or, you know, other types of things. I mean, this is also a pretty big driveway too. Maybe we cut back on that, but I just would like to have some kind of discussion on that.
I agree with you, Bob. I think that, you know, I mean, and the notion that they are, if they are planning on putting a solar array on the garage, that influences my perspective, right? On that additional structure. But when I look at that, I go, okay, well, that's additional footprint within the wetlands buffer. Is it necessary? Right? But certainly, like you said, fit for purpose. If they're adding something to, if there's a net positive somehow, then I look at it differently.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's what I mean by fit for
we agree.
purpose. The
Right.
mitigation, the mitigation is fit for that minor disturbance that we wouldn't have normally done. Yeah.
So then my question is, looking at the house for a moment, why is the house situated where it is versus pushing it a bit more to the northwest so that more of it would be out of the wetland buffer?
Pulling it closer towards the steep slopes. Sure.
Yep.
I guess we were trying to kind of split the difference between the two. We're kind of centering it on the kind of plateau that's here. Space of this kind of area is where the kind of the flattest area is on the site. And then we were trying to avoid having the kind of more of the house kind of coming up out of the grade. So basically we kind of just hit grade kind of at the this corner of the house here. So most of this would kind of be bermed up into the hill to allow this to kind of come in at the first floor, kind of close to where the existing kind of area of the hill kind of levels out at the top right now. And then, I guess excavation wise and access, maintenance wise, just to give them space to be able to get around the house in the future to, service, the back of the house, they need to ever get, any kind of work done in the future, with the well or other things, just to kind of not be, driving into the steeper slopes to be able to kind of get around the house in the future.
So I don't know how everybody feels. I'm sort of feeling like while this plan could work, maybe we should see an alternate where both the house and the garage are pushed out of the wetland buffer as much as possible. I don't know how everybody else feels. I know I am. The more I look at the garage, the more I'm definitely very uncomfortable with that, because we have a garage that's over 900 square feet. And it looks like, I don't know, 30 some odd % of it is within the buffer, and it's not an essential structure. The house, while it is an essential structure, it might be in the best place, or I'm just not positive. In terms of the overall picture, improving the drainage, with the driveway and what have you, having been on the site, that I am very comfortable with.
Andy, from the perspective of pushing that back, that that garage, and now it starts to get into those that steeper area there, what are some of the issues, kind of like with that structure butting into that steeper slope? Obviously, you lose a little bit of floor space and things like that, but
you change the shape of it too. Right now it's almost a square.
Change the shape, yeah. Right,
So-
right. There you go.
I guess the other thing too, it's like the buffer extends this far from the wetlands, but the hill kind of starts to break kind of down the center of the lot here. So basically anything from kind of the center point on is kind of going towards the side away from the wetlands. Just how the topography is working out. And then if we're kind of capturing the runoff from the roof into a rain garden locating out of that buffer, I guess we're trying to make the best effort we can to take any kind of extra runoff out of that area if possible. I guess we could look at how tight we want to get to this, but let's see here. This is about 16 feet or so, 17 feet to the start of the steep slopes from the corner of the house.
Andy, were you thinking reorienting it, like kind of?
I don't know. The house, I don't know what can be done with, moving it 15 feet. I'm not sure it's doing a lot for us, and it might be making other problems, particularly if they need to do engineering for the drainage.
Yeah.
I'm not comfortable that, roughly 3/4 of the house is in the wetland buffer. I'm not sure there's a lot that can be done for that. One could argue, well, you could start, because we're not looking at a class 3 steep slope. you could look at putting the house on the slope. I don't know if that's really, helping us at all. I think it's making other problems. But personally, I'm not happy with it, but I don't have a solution, and I'm not sure there is a great one. The garage, though, I certainly think that can be pulled pretty much out of the buffer.
That's my biggest concern,
Yeah.
is the garage.
Yeah, I mean, I wish the house wasn't, but I'm not sure,
Right.
making a cantilevered house on the steep slope, I think we're gonna end up doing more damage, just trying to protect the wetland buffer. So, I mean, are we all comfortable saying that other than the garage needs to be played with? It's probably a workable plan, and you should come back to us with more detailed drawings and construction sequence so we could permit this. We all comfortable with that? Max, please jump in too.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, I would want to also, what we're asking them to do and their proposed mitigation, I think that needs to be explained. In terms of the wetland plantings, the wetland enhancement, the wildlife crossings, what their effectiveness is going to be, and then the engineering solutions for maintaining the flow of water underneath the driveway in major storm events.
So how
really
about
need to
this? If you're good with the driveway, and reestablishment of that culvert was really the main thing. So we can give more detail on, we can do the design work associated with the culvert. We can commission the wetland mitigation plan for the basin there and get more detail on that. We can fine tune the driveway, fine tune the garage. I can finish the septic design and fine tune all that and those disturbances and the proximity to the garage with the septic system and look at fine tuning that.
Hey, Jason, before
Yeah.
you go too far, I was gonna say, so that square, which is the garage, can we push that over towards where it says proposed septic field and replacement area and start to try and move that? I mean, it's further away from the house, I get that, but there's that little corner of the steep slopes there, but somehow if there's a pocket there that you could still move that field out a little bit further and still get that volume of area that you need for the septic, but still move that garage out a little bit. It looks like maybe we get a bigger portion out of the buffer anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's why I want to, if we can eliminate that little feather that we're calling it, then we can continue on with the septic design and fine tune that, and then we can fine tune the base of the driveway and in the garage area.
And maybe we can nudge the house, maybe 50%. How about we try to push it a little bit away from the buffer, and we can take a look at what that does to our grade and the access from the back, as long as we're not, into the steep slope area. Maybe that's a compromise that we can have on the house.
I think that's
So-
all good.
Now, if we rotate that garage, so that maybe it's a straight shot into it, from the road, can we overlap it with that triangular steep slope corner that we were just talking about right there? Is it okay to overlap the garage with that little corner?
Well,
What's the class of the slope, Jason?
that is the 20% to 35%. It's construction on those slopes would require a ZBA
Yep.
variance.
Oh,
So, and I don't think we wouldn't get that. So,
yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
I would be more inclined to tell you to change, either make the garage a little smaller and or change the shape. Right now, it's almost a perfect square. By going to a rectangle, you probably would get a decent amount of the building out of the wetland.
Yeah, 24 feet depth is ideal. I mean, we can go a little bit shallower, to park a car, but I think 30 feet is, well, anyway, so we can look at it, and if we can then push it into where the proposed septic field is currently, and then adjust the septic field, and perhaps then we move the house closer to the garage.
Could I offer one alternative, since I know that you mentioned it, that it was a wood shop that he was, the person was interested, or he or she was interested in. Does it have to be the same structure? Could you make the garage one part and then put a wood shop as a smaller separate structure, separated with, maybe extra ventilation or whatever, just, it might be nice just to have that as a separate structure. It's just something to consider. I have seen, people have separate structures for just woodworking because of the dust and all. So.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
trying to
yes.
keep our areas down to avoid any other, zoning or planning board review processes, which is.
So I don't think breaking the garage and, having a shed, permanent shed and a garage would be a ZBA issue. So, but it's all suggestions. I mean, because I think next time you come in, you want to be at a point that at worst, we can give you a conditional permit,
That
Thank
was
you,
our,
that
that
would
was
be
our goal,
great.
hopefully. Yeah.
right? And hopefully just we can give you a permit. Yes.
I mean, one more suggestion that I see too, potentially is rotating the house as well, so that the deck is outside of that 100-foot setback. I don't know what the thinking was behind the design and the interior of the walls, but that the 872 square foot deck brings you much closer to that stone wall that you were talking about. And I don't know if you could just rotate the floor plan.
Yeah, we were
So the
trying to
entryways
locate.
would shift.
Yeah, we're trying to locate most of the kind of public spaces on the kind of southern facing
exposure.
side here. Yeah.
And luckily, I don't know if luckily, but that's also coincides with the more desired view. Of course, it's more beautiful to look into the valley and up the hill across that wetland. And also the southern exposure is best at that corner. Does it make any difference if it were a patio versus deck?
I mean, a deck, we can technically make it impermeable if we allow the
true,
water to
yeah.
drain through.
Yeah, deck is,
We could tighten up the footprint of the deck a bit too, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was a suggestion, just because
Mm.
it seems like that is one of the simpler changes to the outside of the structure that would pull you, give you, whatever, 10 to 12 feet additional, if the board was looking for that.
yeah, I mean,
But-
yeah, I think visually, we do see some opportunities that we can manipulate. Perhaps there is that extra room outside of the buffer. But we were also trying to keep the structure very simple and affordable, and that's why it's a rectangular shape. All right, well, we'll brainstorm a bit, and hopefully we can come back with a much more improved proposal.
It looks like, did your clients have a question? I see a hand up in their box.
This is Jonathan Pierce. Thanks for letting us participate in the board meeting. I'm one of the owners. My wife is present, Anna Maria. Yes, I think all the considerations have been well, discussed. The shape of the garage can be decreased, and I think Juhi has suggested that. I think that could get it farther out of the buffer as desired. We do consider having a garage just because of snow. Granted, we're not native New Yorkers. I'm from Texas, and then we've moved from California to this area from the fire zones in the Sierra and from the very large fires in those areas. And what in the snow, we would like to have a garage if we could to be able to shelter vehicles and move in and out better. So I'm 71, 72 almost. And because of our age and so on, we're not quite ready for the most rugged adventures. We'd like to have the garage as close to the house as we could, but its size can be definitely reduced. And if that will help, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming in tonight, and we look forward to the revised plans.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you,
Okay, sounds like a
everybody.
plan.
See you next month, I assume.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I guess we should move to 28/30 River Lane. So Max, we're still at the planning board stage with this, right? What are they looking for now?
Yeah, I think where we left it off with the applicants at the last meeting was that they would summarize all of the mitigation and site-specific planning that's been done to offset development within the buffer, and since it is so close to the Hudson. So they, I think, brought those plans back. They were going to update us on any changes to those plans. I don't know particularly where they stand with the planning board and how the planning board is, or where they're at in the review process. So I'm hoping they can update us on that.
Okay, so who for the applicant is going to take the lead as an agent?
I'm the applicant. My husband's downstairs with our baby, but I think James is on the line at River Architects. The planning board meeting is next week. I think I just heard James.
Yes, hi, I just got let in. So. Okay. Hello, everyone.
They were just asking where we are with the planning board, as we're still at the planning board phase, and I said that meeting is next week.
Okay. Yep.
James, you always come in under somebody else's name. Now you're Vinny.
It's trying to fly in under the radar. I'll try to figure it out, but I really am James.
He's a spy.
Thank you. Good to see everyone. I hope everyone's had a good start to an already crazy new year. Yeah, so we've submitted some additional information to you. I think we've given you an updated letter on outlining I'm going to just share screen just so you see what I'm saying. An updated letter outlining our processes here, looking at the seawall, managing flood prevention, and stormwater mitigation, in an outline of the sustainable building and landscaping practices that we are working on. I think you had seen this, and we've discussed these aspects considerably. A few things that are new. Max had pointed out that we needed to get site engineering to you. So we've got that. We've got John Kalin's drawings that include the septic design and some other aspects, including details regarding the septic construction, silt fencing details that tie back to the site plan that he's done, as well as a concrete washing station, which is obviously very important given the environmental concerns of the site. And so, just same diagrams pretty much outlining the two properties that will be merged. Currently, the property line that will be extinguished, hopefully, is right here in the middle, in this kind of light where the natural boat launch is there. And let's see. We've also included the Seawall Designs, which Asia from Race is available tonight as well to discuss any questions that you might have. It's our what we've included to date are basically the application that we've had before you. I think I don't have the whole package here because I'm not seeing all of our design drawings in here. So I'm going to take off this screen. I'm going to stop sharing while I find the right screen. In fact, Dee, if you want to pull the, I think you had the right ones up. If you want to pull that up, if that's helpful.
Yeah, I can share my screen.
James, I had a question. I couldn't get it out fast enough. Hit mute. That detail you were showing, what was that for? Where was that on the property?
Let's have a look at these drawings set here. Wow, it looks better on your screen. Is it this sheet, Bob?
Yeah, the detail that you were going through, I just, like, you started and I wasn't really sure where we were talking about. Where is this detail? Is this?
Okay, so these are details that are called out on John's site plan. I think it's better that John, who's on the call, can discuss this. But also, I'm just kind of giving a quick fly through just to get everyone oriented on where we are with what's been submitted to you. Okay, so yeah, there are site plan with our zoning conformance, and recall our zoning application has been accepted. So the variances, I should say, to be more specific about that. You can see the kind of adjustments to the seawall that we've proposed in our in front of the Army Corps of Engineers and New York State DEC with Race Engineering. And so I think that just the big takeaway that I recall from our last meeting were some questions regarding the just seeing the site engineering from John, and also I believe that you had some questions for both the seawall and for John, I think particularly.
So is somebody going to discuss the seawall with us?
Okay, so
yeah, this is Azure Schleicher with Race Coastal Engineering. I thought we talked about the seawall extensively at last meeting, but I'm happy to go over that again. As James mentioned, we have permits pending with DEC and Army Corps, fairly along in that review process with them, hopefully getting to the finish line. But we're replacing the existing steel basket gabion wall with precast concrete block wall that is similar to the existing wall that is on number 30 already. And so we are, here that shows the replacement footprint. So right now you have a very irregular wall. We're straightening out a bit, cutting back in some locations and balancing out in other locations to reestablish the line of the new wall. The existing stone riprap that's at the base of the existing gabion wall will be replaced and left as toe protection for the new wall.
So overall, Max, correct me if I'm wrong, what was outstanding on this is we were talking about the seawall and how it was being constructed, meaning from land or sea. And I think we've pretty much decided it's being done from land for economic purposes, and we could probably live with that. There was discussion on the pool, which is totally within a wetland buffer or so. And we had some outstanding discussion. I'm not sure we did with the septic, because I assume at this point, it's the planning board is just asking for our comments and recommendations. Have I missed anything?
No, I don't think so. I think it was really, I think we wanted to look at all of the mitigation measures that were in place that were outlined in that letter, and kind of look at it cohesively, because I think at the, all of the meetings, the multiple meetings that we've had, we've discussed the mitigatory measures that the applicants put forth, but I think we wanted it synthesized and walked through. And then I guess once that's done, I guess the board would need to just, take a look at what they feel are the mitigatory measures for the proposed plan they have in place, and if they feel that that's acceptable or not, or what changes to the plan at that point they would want to make. So that was the overall message that I thought the board kind of left with the last time we heard from the applicant.
Yeah, I think you summed that up very well. And I know we had received 2 letters from Cheryl, one from a neighbor on one side, having an agreement with the work, and another one being concerned about the work and liability. I think I'm sort of comfortable saying that that is really the purview of the planning board and the town attorney, and not the wetland board, the conservation board. So I think we can just put that aside. So I'd essentially like to have comments from the board of where they think we should go with this, what type of comments we should send to the planning board.
Yeah, I can start. Sorry. I mean, my perspective here is 100% of the property is in the buffer, and basically, unless the planning board approves the mitigation or the joining of these 2 properties, whatever mitigation has been proposed is variable. Like, I mean, we don't really know. I mean, if they don't approve it, they can come back and say, well, the house has to be like in kind to the existing house that's there. You got 2 of them, but maybe you build one and you don't build the other, or you shrink the footprint of this, or I just feel like we have to wait for the planning board to kind of decide on what's going on here, especially, given the questions about the walls and stuff like that, which again, that's not my expertise, that seawall. But yeah, I would say, like, the pool, I mean, the discussion like we have many times here is like, well, it's a not necessary structure in the buffer, but the entire house, 100%, if not more, of the property is going to be disturbed. Even the neighbors' properties might be disturbed here while they're doing this construction, and the road will be disturbed. So 100% plus is going to be disturbed. So putting a pool in is kind of a minor issue, if it's engineered right, and it's a natural pool that's going to be the only freshwater source in the entire area that creatures are going to go to, and you're putting in native plants to attract creatures. I'm at odds with it, because it's very different than anything else we do. I mean, normally someone wants to put a pool in and they want to put it in the side of a stream. The pool breaks, it's going to put chlorine into the stream, and then have localized kill because of the chlorine. We don't have chlorine here, but we also have a much larger sink. So if the pool breaks, nothing happens to the Hudson. I mean, it's a very different risk calculation for the pool. I can't really speak to the wall, but obviously, seawalls are going to be important with the tides rising, for sure. So, but I think, like, I'd like to see the planning board weigh in and say that they're comfortable with, putting 2 properties like this together, because this has happened before and it's going to happen again. And I think we really need to kind of see what their guidance is before we go ahead and start agreeing that we got mitigations, to put a pool in the buffer right alongside of the Hudson. You know, I mean, in this case, the impact is pretty minimum because you're disturbing 100% of the site, and the risk to the Hudson is pretty low in comparison to an example that I had before with the small stream. So, you know, I would be comfortable with the pool in this case, but, you know, like, I don't know if the planning board really feels that this is an appropriate thing to do, is combine two houses like this, make one lot like that. So that's my opinion anyway.
Have other comments, opinions? I mean, I sort of weigh in with Rob, though I'm not real comfortable with the pool being an unnecessary structure totally within a buffer. In terms of precedent, the planning board has allowed combination of lots. I don't know what the number is on Hudson Road now, Hudson River Road now, that's to the north, but that was, I believe, 3 lots combined, and a new structure is being built. So yeah, I'm not really sure where we should go with this right now. You know, one thing we could do, and Max weigh in, is pretty much do what Rob is saying, is that if the planning board is comfortable with the idea of combining these 2 lots to have a single house and with a pool in the wetland buffer, then we should relook if they're, and they're saying yes to that, then we should relook at how we can make sure that we have the most ideal mitigation measures. I'm not an expert on seawalls, but I've seen work done by Race before. We've reviewed work they've done before. That I'm much more comfortable with because we're not really breaking any precedent there whatsoever. In terms of the house itself, again, I don't feel that a lot of that is totally in our purview, because today you would never be able to build any of those houses along the river there, but they're there. So you know,
Yeah, I mean, that gets
James,
back to the grandfather.
Yeah, I mean, they're grandfathered, exactly. James, I don't want to hang up your clients, but I think at this point, I think we might, and Max, I think maybe you and I might need to discuss this with Neil Zuckerman, the chairperson of the planning board, what he needs right now from us.
I was just going to say, Andy, because like the grandfather issue comes up a lot with septics, right? And we run into this all the time. It's grandfathered. I'm going to replace it in kind. It's going to be in the buffer. You know, I only have 70, feet I can put of trenches, whatever. And so we're forced that, because the Board of Health is going to approve it, we have to say, okay, well, it's going to stay there. But there's no progress if we continue to do grandfathering for especially a septic in that case. I just had to say that point, because
Though
I know we always have that problem with septics.
Right.
This is not the issue here. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's the best, because I think they're, I think their septic they're using, and we've permitted these before. They're using a high-tech septic system that is.
Yeah, no, the septic's not an issue with this one, but I'm saying in other cases, yeah. I'm just saying that grandfather issue, like, okay, well, it's a grandfather's slot, like we can put a house here, but the current house there's 2 houses, right? So now if the planning board is going to allow us to make a bigger house out of it, it's a different issue. I don't know. I mean, it's certainly, this grandfather issue most of the time affects us with utilities like the septic. And it's been, as you know, very frustrating for us with some of that part of it. This is an extension of that, but yeah.
Hi all, it's Jesse and Jenna. I appreciate all the insights, and obviously it's a very complicated project. Just to hammer home the point, we already live here. We're here now, and you've visited us, and obviously, as you know, one of the properties is already derelict and is effectively like a pile of trash, which is not beneficial to the environment nor the river. And what we're offering to do is remove hundreds of pounds of fossil fuels from the neighboring wetlands, river, and to shore up the shoreline to better the environment around us. So effectively, from a conservation standpoint, what we're doing is bettering everything. We don't intend to be contentious about it. We want to do the best thing for the environment, for the town. And so while I understand that the planning board purview does have an effect on your decision, we have only the best intention, and I think our plans show that. And in fact, if you do not make a decision on the property, what you're leaving behind is something in disrepair that will only get worse. And what we're doing is endeavoring to spend money and effort to make things better.
I'm,
I think that's a great point.
No, absolutely. I mean, they're trying to improve the site. You know, again, well, I just feel like the planning board has the next move, in my opinion, because this is a big deal.
Yeah, so I agree with you, Rob. I do think the planning board, I think that, Max, I think, you know, you and I together can draft a short memo. I mean, I think our comforts are the septic, I think we're comfortable with, and please, anybody step in, right?
No, absolutely. I'm okay with the septic.
In terms of the seawall, you know, I think there's certain mitigations and what have you, but we're working with a firm that has done work in the town and done it well. So I don't, you know, I think we just need to mention that needs to be looked at. I think some of us have a concern, not all of us, about whether a pool or non-necessary structure should be included. You know, in terms of the house itself, I think it's just begs us to ask a question. If the planning board is okay with the expansion or combination of two houses on the site, and they have done this before in the same strip of houses, then I think we've done our duty on that. And then when they come back to us, we can then overlook the little aspects. So if they tell us that they're comfortable with the pool, I know I'm not, but I think a lot of you are, then, you know, we just make sure that the engineering plans are in place to protect, in this case, the Hudson, the watershed from it, and so on. I don't think it's very complicated. Does that make sense to you, Max? I mean, I think you and I could put something together simple that'll at least let this move on in the planning board and not hang everybody up.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I think something that is just coming to the surface here is that I think we're trying to look at this as the project as a whole, and look at ultimately what changes we're going to be granting permission for. So, just maybe one of the things that could be highlighted here even today, just to reiterate to the board, what ultimately will be the changes, and so that we can weigh out what that effect may look like, or what that may affect on the site. So what are we looking at in terms of combining the two structures? What's the change in square footage of buildings on the site? Are we going from a structure that's 900 square feet with an additional structure that's 1,500 or 1,700 square feet, and combining that into one structure that's X? Maybe that is a good approach, just to reiterate for the board, to kind of look. I know we've been looking at the project as a whole. We've been looking at the structure and the site as a whole, in its kind of finished concept. But for us, we always look at the change. What is the change that's going to occur ultimately? And that, the summarization of all the mitigation measures up to this point and what the additions to the property are going to be are great. But I think that what I think everyone might still be struggling to see is ultimately, what are we going to be granting permission? What changes are going to happen there, beyond, maybe that don't stand out. And I think one of the main things is, overall square footage of the developed area. So I don't know if that can be reiterated again too.
Can I just ask a clarification question? Because I know these applicants have been in front of the Conservation Board a number of times, and I know we've all expressed, while there have been some differences on aspects of the project, we've all expressed that it's kind of a model for sustainability in many ways. But just so I have so people have a clear sense of Andy, the next steps. Were you saying that the planning board has to make a decision on allowing for the combination of the lots and the seawall and natural pool. And once they do that, then it will come back to the conservation board. And at that point, Andy, what role does if the planning board does approve those things, what role does the conservation board have at that point?
We would most likely oversee, because you would need a permit for the seawall. You would need a permit for the pool. I don't think you would need anything else. I personally feel we should be very careful about calling this house an example of a net zero house. And I say that because it's being built in an area that today you would never build in. So, I want to give these people as much leeway as we can within reason, but I also don't want to set a bad precedent. So I think what we can do, I think Max and I think you summed it up very well, Max. I think we can put together a short memo that brings up our concerns and questions and basically tells the planning board, if they're comfortable with all of this, then where we will help them will be with things like, helping oversee the seawall, the septic if necessary, and the pool.
I think
And
everything actually will need a wetlands permit, the house
It will.
included, because it's in,
Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
every aspect of this. But,
Yeah.
I understand the process that you'd like to put in place for this, Andy and Bob. I just want to encourage my colleagues on the conservation board to consider, as we set this forth, this new plan in motion, that when this project comes back to us, that we are really thinking about the best possible outcome for these properties, right? That's all. I
Yeah,
just
no, I
want
think
us to
that's good.
be, I just want us to be thinking about the best possible outcome, because obviously the best possible outcome that we might want,
Yeah.
not one that
No.
we will get.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah.
We're not there, all the homes along that road, along the Hudson River are not going to magically disappear. They exist. These are private properties where people are living. So what is the best possible outcome? And, that we may be challenged by that notion, but I think that we need to look at what's been presented by this landowner and by their team of designers and architects, and say what exists now is not the best possible outcome for these projects. And quite possibly what is being presented is. So I just want to throw that out there. That's all.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's exactly the direction that I was trying to imply, and maybe I didn't do a good job with it, but the best outcome for the site really depends on what the planning board is going to allow us to do in the site, right? So if they're going to allow the house as is, then they can do all the mitigations that they've got. They can put the green roof on, if they're going to allow the pool, they could put the natural pool in. But until we really hear what they're allowing, it's hard for us to know, what is the best outcome, because what's possible, right? Right now we've got the best house, but if the planning board's not going to allow that, then they're going to come back. So I'm just trying to, say, let's look at that. That's all. But I do like the design, by the way. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, and I do want to remind you, and this is not a threat, of course, right? But this remind you that if the clients become frustrated by this process and walk away, sell two houses that get renovated in some way that hardly needs a permit, then you're back to status quo with two houses on the site that will be prone to flooding, will likely still have fossil fuels, oil within the floodplain of the Hudson and within the wetlands buffer. You're going back to 1950 technology essentially. So here's an opportunity to move things forward, and I know that you appreciate that, but that's what one of the possible outcomes is, that if this project doesn't move forward. So it as an example, I think it really, if we were in an ideal setting where there was no issues with wetlands buffers or proximity to water, ridgeline or anything like that, then this wouldn't be in front of you. We have other projects that are, fantastic passive houses that you never see because they're in fully conforming sites. Here's an opportunity to highlight something in the work that you review. I've seen a lot of great projects in the preceding applications, but I've never heard anyone talk about really doing this sort of work, or not often, right? So like, here's an opportunity to do something that showcases what Philipstown is really about. And this is the application that's in front of you. I mean, we've gotten the zoning board of approval for setbacks and the lot area coverage. In other ways, the house is conforming. So it's, the issues for the planning board will cross those bridges, but the application that's in front of you is what we're, asking for review. I think obviously if the planning board doesn't approve, then we'll be coming back to you. We'll be going back to zoning board possibly, because it's going to cause us to redesign everything, these months of work. So, I do want to remind you that this is really the outcome of a lot of discussions, both with your board, with the planning board, and the full process with the zoning board.
Well, for what it's worth, I'd be comfortable saying what we feel about this proposal as is. And if the planning board turns it down, they turn it down. But I don't think it's unreasonable to ask our board to make a decision and tell the planning board, this is what we think, and now you have to approve it or disapprove it.
Okay, so Jan, so what's your thought then? I'm putting you on the spot.
I think it's a beautiful scenic site, totally impossible to build on today, but they have an absolute right to build on it because they're there. And I think they're doing about as good a job as you can do. I think the amount of unnecessary expense they've committed to in terms of mitigation, green roof, reduced energy, bird-proof windows, high-tech sewers, I'd be comfortable with whatever tweaks this board wants to make, saying, let's go with it. And let the planning board tell us, do they agree or disagree?
I get some more comments. Does everybody sort of agree with something like that?
I think yes. I think I agree with Jan.
I mean, I've already said that I think the planning board should say it first. So again, the reason being that, whatever mitigations we say, is really dependent upon what they're willing to endorse, and again, maybe they've approved it in one particular case, but I think every case is a different situation, but
Well, yeah, I sort of fall in where you do, Rob. MJ?
Again, I think we have to ask that essential question. What is the best outcome for this property? And to my mind, this is probably the best outcome for this property. So I would be ready to vote. I also, if you want to proceed with greater caution, or you want to put this on, if as Bob and Andy have said, you want to have the planning board act first. I'm fine with that as well, but to my mind, this is the best possible outcome for this particular property. Do I love it? Do I love, do I love buildings by the river? I do not, but these are home sites, and I think the applicants have done a great job on like threading the needles that we have put in their path on this.
I'd just say, for what it's worth, I don't I think we should try and avoid split decisions to the extent we can. By and large, the board seems to operate on the basis of consensus. So if, Andy, if you and Bob think we need to go back to the planning board, let's go back to the planning board. But let's make a commitment to ask the planning board to decide this month. So at our next meeting, we can decide something. I don't think
Absolutely.
our board, we're just not being fair to the people if we don't give them a definitive answer as soon as possible.
Okay. So I myself, I think, I don't want to use the word easiest, but I think maybe the more fair balanced would be a simple memo to the planning board that we would like you to decide whether you're going to permit this. And if you are, we'll let you know what our concerns are, because we think this could be a very good outcome for the property. I'm surmising it a little more simply than that. I'm also seeing in the chat, I guess it's one of the neighbors, Christina O'Neill. She said she submitted a letter. Yes, we have seen it. And that at this moment is going to be more of the purview of the town attorney and the planning board before it comes back to us, because we're not permitting anything specifically at this moment.
Ms. O'Neill has also asked if she could comment at this time.
If it's short, I'm fine with that because it's getting late. So if we could put her in, but let's please keep it to just a couple minutes.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, I am the homeowner and the resident at 26, which is the immediate neighbor to 28. And I did submit a letter today. I did just want to ensure that the current plans that were submitted did reflect certain changes, indicating that some of the previous items that had been submitted were not approved by myself and my partner Jack with regards to creation of a swale and wall on our property. Also, the driving factor is that I did speak to the Wildricks. We have concerns about the mitigation of the work on the seawall. There's things that we have just learned that, again, were not presented to us or had not received our approval, such as the necessary requirement to take down our natural seawall in order to repair or rebuild the seawall at 28. We also were not aware that of the scope of the heavy machinery that will be on the peninsula. We do have concerns about the integrity of the land with that work, and maybe the consideration of possibly doing that from the water as another solution. In addition to the proposed time frame of the work that is being asked for. I know it was recommended to be completed between October and December, and it appears that it's being requested to do from January through September, which I think is a huge disruption to our family and to the immediate neighbors for the entire season, for any outdoor enjoyment. We'll pretty much be sequestered to inside our house if we don't want to be looking at boulders being moved and listening to noise. So I just kind of wanted to bring that to the attention, and unfortunately this was just brought to my attention, so I just thought it was important that I bring that up.
Okay, we appreciate you letting us know. And as I said, we're not permitting at this moment, so that we will take that into consideration if and when we get to the point where we're permitting. And that does make sense. Thank you. Max, let's you and I be in touch in the next day or two. We'll put together a short memo, which we'll distribute to all of the members, board members to look at, which will talk about, what is the best possible outcome. This might be the best possible outcome. And we'd like the planning board to act first, and then we will weigh in and help them as need be.
Okay.
Okay? Thank you. So I guess next on our agenda, and it is late, is 66 Highland Drive in Garrison, which was originally approved by us, I guess, about 6 or 7 years ago. And the permit expired and they're bringing it back. We have a representative.
Yes, we have Allegra Jordan. Mute myself. Hey,
Yep.
sorry, just trying to unmute myself. Good evening,
evening.
everybody. Yes, so everybody should have access to all of our documents right now. I'm waiting for general. Yeah, there we go.
You want to bring up, can you see Allegra's screen and hear me at the same time, or is that too complex?
No, we can do that. We can.
Yeah, if you'd allow me.
Yes, Allegra works for Third Floor Corporation, as do I. I think that Mary Ting, architect on the project, is here, and the homeowner, Mr. Friedman, is also here. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. We're well back, and if you look at it, you can see you have it up.
And Allegra, can you share your screen with us, please?
I'm in the process. Just give me 1 second.
So you'll see the house is tight up to the road, and then it's got a very steep slope. It's a radical slope, but it levels pretty nicely before we get down to Sprout Brook, right? So it's steep around the house, and we're outside the buffer zone, but don't be so big so they can see the whole lot. Back up a little bit, smaller, yeah. And we work as a team, and then and sometimes it's sometimes it's fun. So the only significant concern, there's a culvert that takes mostly stormwater, and then that runs down. Of course, the runoff from that. So there's a reasonable concern about construction erosion or other impact on that. There's no direct impact on it. The construction is we're putting a new roof on an existing house. This is, we're not right up against the Hudson River, but, probably the siting of all this would be a little bit different if it were built today. But the landscape impact is quite minimal. Basically, we will carefully dig hand or a very small auger or something like that. Some piers. There's no new foundation work on this job. So it's really about disturbance during construction being the concern, not any real change or new impact. The roof area remains the same, et cetera. Because of the radical nature of the slope, it's beneficial both for safety, for construction safety, for use of the house, and to maintain effectively a two-story dwelling. It is a two-story dwelling in all practical purposes, but because the slope is so radical, a lot of the basement is exposed, but you're talking about boiler room, et cetera. So, whatever, there's not too much to say about it in my view. Hopefully people agree with that, but we would be working within the buffer zone if you consider that the culvert is protected, or the runoff from the culvert is protected, in that it would obviously directly impact Sprout Brook. And I guess I'll just take questions unless somebody else wants to say something about it.
Max, you want to weigh in first?
I mean, really, the prior permit that was approved was for the addition of a deck and the hand installation of 14 piers to support that deck. Really what triggered the reissue, essentially the reconsideration of the plan was, I believe, some changes to the construction narrative regarding what types of machinery would be used to do the work within the buffer, and then also the addition of the 30 cubic yards of fill, which was not permitted up to this point. So really that's basically my only concern, essentially, is having the board weigh in and get a little bit more detail on the addition of fill, what protection measures are going to be put in place, what the construction sequence looks like. But I would agree that, the impact will be during construction, not necessarily persisting into the future.
Do I have comments or questions from the board? So I think, there's several different ways. I think the other reason it also came back to us, Max, is I think they had let the original permit, they renewed it and then let it expire. So it has to come back to us anyway. So the question is whether we want to do a site visit if we think it's necessary.
Max was there, so
Yep.
it was visited by Max.
The other question is because, I looked at the plans. I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I do think that there could be some more details on protection during construction. And if everybody's comfortable with that, then we could, vote on a contingent permit if everybody's comfortable with that. And then, once you get back to us with final plans, how you're protecting the area, what's being done with the additional fill, then you'd have a permit.
That makes sense to me, as I see it, it's quite small, it's probably Ernie'd probably be there with one truck, right? And then we would lay that in and probably just cover it, because right up against the house.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to remember back because I was involved with this. I thought.
Well, the fill is new. The original permit, I think there were two things. I think that culvert was basically not noticed, was one thing. So at one point we were told, well, I wasn't part of it at this stage, but I believe, and Martin could clarify, but I believe at one point it was passed over in 2016, because if you're only looking at Sprout Brook as protected and not this sort of runoff from the culvert as protected, then it's outside the buffer anyway. So the only thing that it's inside is the buffer. So the challenge in construction, in terms of things going down that hill, you've got a big broad flat. So it's easy to set up silt fence and retainage and any basic competent approach, and you're not going to have an issue hitting Sprout Brook, because it would have to flow a long way, and so just a basic, decent, proper practice, and that's not an issue there. So it's really about flow to the side, which is not, there is some flow in that direction in terms of runoff, but you're really just talking about, what you'd have in a simple excavation, like a small storage in terms of volume. So if we tarp that, and then the deck gets built over it, so it's pretty easy for us to protect. We can basically hang tarp and tarp over soil and basically keep that soil from ever even getting wet until it has a chance to stabilize. And I think it's going to be under a deck. We'd probably fabric and gravel weight the whole thing, so it just doesn't really have anywhere to go. It's basically just providing insulation and bringing the grade up a little bit, which will make the construction safer and long-term use safer, and basically not force Martin to sprinkler what's really, for all practical purposes, a single family 2-story house. So, but I have no problem having that written up, or Mary, and I can work together to get this written up so that it's clarified and we can be more detailed in terms of how we retain the soil. On the other side, the soil's up against the house, away from the affected area, so the house itself becomes the protector from any kind of runoff problem. Basically, it would backs up to the house. So and with a very long way down before we get to the stream.
Max,
And a
your
small-
thoughts?
I don't have any issue permitting it, unless the board wants to see the property, but I think it's fairly straightforward. I just wanted to ensure that we gave them the proper permission to use the right machinery that they needed to use and not, essentially mitigate any sort of potential stop work orders or anything in the future by getting them the proper approvals. So.
Yeah, and I think that the plans should
yeah.
be, adapted to show silt fence and what have you, because it's, some of it's shown, not all of it.
Yeah, we need to show, the surround of the specific locations. Probably need, blow this up and a little bit of construction detail on it, but we can do that.
Yeah.
What does the board think? Are we
I was just
com-
gonna ask a question about the fill again, like, I haven't seen the property, but I'm pretty close by, but is it to make the grade level or?
To bring the grade up, insulate the foundation in that area, and basically allow to meet code in terms of a two-story residence because of the radical steepness of the hill itself. So basically provide sufficient fill around so that fire access to up the higher windows and things like that would be safer and easier. And also it'll help improve the thermal property of the basement a little bit, surround the basement a little bit.
What was the estimated amount of fill that you were bringing in?
It's it's within the buffer. Yeah, within the buffer, it's 34. And then there's a little bit more, I think, but it's, less than 40 yards or something. It's really not a
In
major-
total? In
Yeah,
total?
It's pretty
Okay.
small.
Yeah, that's not a lot. So what's everybody's thought? Are we comfortable voting on a permit with conditions that Max will oversee?
Yeah, I am.
Sounds reasonable.
Okay.
Yep.
Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Who's
I'll
first?
second.
Who's second?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Max, do we need to go through Crest Road in Cold Spring and Route 9D in Garrison for this coming planning board meeting, or is that not necessary yet?
I think, well, I think we should just update the board on our site visits and then,
Yep.
Like we touched on before the meeting started, our basically our action that we want to take before the next planning board meeting on the Route 9D property.
That's the simpler one by far.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I mean, just speaking to that, the board, members of the board and myself visited 2 properties that were referrals to the conservation board. And maybe Jason can touch on them if or bring up any of the site plans just so we can go over them quickly for the rest of the board members that weren't able to attend. If you want to start with Crest Road.
All right. I know it's getting late. I appreciate everybody's consideration here. So, this is the Golinczak site on Crest Road. They are before you with a referral from the planning board for disturbance of for consideration of these disturbance on these 20% slopes here along the side of the property line. Really the only way to get up to that to this buildable area up at the top is through this little fork here of 20% slope. So I think we did a good job of balancing the cut and fill in order to get up that slope. And other than that, we're kind of threading this new driveway through the steep slopes. I don't really know what more that we can do. with regard to that. There are some wetlands on the property, but we've steered clear of those. So it's really just it's the slopes really. I don't know if anybody has any concerns or thoughts with regard to that, but you know, as far as I'm concerned with my own work, I think that we did a pretty good job of getting up to that buildable area up there.
Yeah, it's not an easy site, and it's going to be a ridiculously expensive driveway. But other than getting an easement from somebody else's property, I'm not sure what else you could do.
Yeah, he did approach the neighbors for an easement, and nobody. I mean, they're not even considering it. So this is what we're left with.
So, does anybody have any comments?
I just want to mention that Jason has the record for most challenged sites in one meeting. Severely challenged sites.
Yeah, now this one.
It seems like
Wow.
Yeah, your specialty.
it seems like they just you know, there's no easy sites left.
Yeah,
So
I will
you know,
say, as I hiked after Jason on the site visit, I thought, how long could a driveway really be? And the answer is really, really long on this
Jan,
site.
you did an awesome job. That was very impressive.
I was just trying to keep up with you and Andy and Max.
You did an awesome job.
Okay, so I think we're good with that. And how about 825 Route 90, the Sadlon Wenske property, if I'm saying it properly?
I believe that's yes, Sven Wenske. So yeah, this is on Route 9D.
It's next to the rec center.
Next to the rec center is on the other. It's actually shown right here. If you can still see my screen, the rec center is actually right over here. We actually parked at the rec center, walked down this traveled way across there's an existing there's some ponds down here where the buffers come up about halfway up this slope here. I don't know if your board reviewed this during the subdivision process. I guess they should have, but
yeah,
this was a you know, this was a recently approved subdivision lot. This is Open Space Institute created this lot, and as soon as it came on the market, the applicants purchased it, and this is what they're proposing. We have so this is a referral from the planning board. I think it was just, you know, just the
because it was in the
presence
part of it
of,
was in the scenic overlay, I believe, was the issue.
well,
Right,
you know,
Max?
yeah, you know, when Ron referred it, he really didn't mention anything about the scenic protection over, you know, needing a referral for the scenic protection overlay, and I don't fully understand that myself. I to be honest with you, I didn't really look into it, but I think the referral was mostly because of the steep slopes and the wetland buffer on the property. So
Right, but you're outside of both.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
You're outside of both, but I guess the planning board had you do a mapping of the larger trees.
Well,
right.
The tree plan is required for all site plans. Technically, they do a lot of times they do waive the requirement for 8-inch trees, but in this case, they being in the scenic protection overlay, they did not. So, you know, this is similar to the Mark Kahn job over on 403, same scenic protection overlay, you know, area. So I don't know what was done for that, but the requirements here are similar to that, as far as what the planning board was looking for as far as as far as screening and things like that. So,
I mean, I don't think this is going to stand out. I mean, Max, you were there, and Jan, I don't think it's going to stand out. The forest that exists, while somewhat mature, is, I wouldn't necessarily call it a healthy forest. It's dominated by a lot of black locust, which really shouldn't be there, and red maple. And I don't think we really have much to say about this. We're away from the steep slopes in the wetland.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about the public easements. Is that related to the Arnold flight path?
They
Or
will
is
remain.
Is it
Yes.
other?
No, it is on, there's another part of the parcel which is not on this map, I guess going to the left, which would be to the west, but they're planning to leave that intact.
that's correct. And those
That's
those
a
will be,
state landmark, isn't it? So they don't have a choice, right?
Yeah, they don't have a choice, but they're not. And truthfully, the area to me that would be most sensitive, which is not on this map, is it's almost an hourglass-like lot. If you look in the right corner, you can sort of see the shape, is what's nearer the river. And there's no building, there's no nothing there.
Agreed.
So
That's more sense.
Ron's referral was due to the steep slopes on the property. I just looked at his memo, so.
we're out of it. So I think that's really it.
Okay. So we'll
Thank you,
draft,
Jason.
we'll draft memo.
Yep.
We'll draft memos for next week for the planning board in regards to those two properties.
okay, that would be great.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any, is there any stormwater or other discussions?
I have a 2-hour long presentation on stormwater. Perhaps that's an angle,
I
right?
hope not.
No.
Be great, Max.
Okay, so the only other quick discussion is I, just before this meeting, revised and sent out to all of you a proposed, and it needs a ending memo to the planning board in regard to the final environmental impact statement for Hudson Highland Reserve. I myself, and I think most of you, when I queried you before the holidays, agreed that we should make some comments. So if everybody could look at that quickly and just share it with Max and I, any comments or additions you want to make, and then we'll get it out to the planning board, probably on Monday at latest.
So you want comments by
Tonight?
or Thursday?
Thursday, Friday, yeah, that would be great. Yeah,
Give us a
that'd be great.
deadline.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, how about Friday morning if you could?
Okay.
I mean, it's pretty simple and straightforward. I think what's not fully part of our purview is the fact, though we are allowed to comment on it, that it's not a conservation subdivision as is known by both the town code and what's best practices in planning, conservation planning. I think our biggest issue, though, is that there really was no change in habitat fragmentation and fragmentation of wetland structures by removing the equestrian center. All they did is shift houses over there. So you'll see it, it's not very long. And then Max, you and I should speak in the next day or two at worst, and we'll get these memos out. And what we will distribute to everybody is the little bit more difficult one, which is for the house on Hudson Road. Am I saying it right? Hudson Lane. But I think, it will just basically focus on, what's the best possible outcome. This might very well be it. We need the planning board to weigh in, are you comfortable? And then this is what we think we could help you do. Right?
Okay.
And can I just make a quick comment? Andy, I just wanted to make sure all the Conservation Board members, I forwarded when we had first talked about the Hudson Highlands Reserve and whether or not the project was going to get referred back to the Conservation Board. As discussed, I went to the town attorney, Steve Gaba, and he gave a response to that, which I emailed to the Conservation Board on December 10th, which just suggested, the attorneys views about when the Conservation Board could make comments, and also opinions about the idea that pulling my thoughts together at the 10:22 moment, at which thoughts come together more difficultly, but and also expressing the idea that the Hudson Highlands project will come before the town board for a zoning amendment change, and at that time, again, the town board could request advice or comments from the Conservation Board, and then finally Steve Gabba's response. I mean, he took the approach that it was a conservation subdivision by how maybe not by intent, and this is Steve Gabba's email, but by how it is written currently in the town code, and that in the future, if the board wants to revisit changing how the conservation subdivision is written up in town code, we could do that. Anyway, I'm just redirecting people back if they didn't see it on December 10th to the email I forwarded from Steve Gabba about this topic.
Do we need any comments or anything on that? I mean, I
think, Rob, I think the view was what Steve Gabba was saying, and maybe I'm being more polite to him than I want to be, is that the planning board, and I will agree with Steve Gabba on this, the planning board does not necessarily have to re-refer this back to us. Though one might argue that we are an interested agency and they should refer it back to us. But there is no reason that we cannot comment on it. The problem with CEQA is twofold to begin with. One is that if you don't play by the CEQA process, there are no CEQA police. That's not the issue here. The other big problem with CEQA is that it is unfortunately a very subjective versus objective process. So a final environmental impact statement is very much written by the applicants rather than by outside experts. When I say outside experts, people hired by the town or a municipality and so on. So it's a very well-intentioned process, but it's really never been a wonderful process. And the planning board they can decide to listen to what we say or not, but they don't have to specifically solicit us. And that's what that's how I read Steve Gabba's advice and listening to him talking to the planning board quite a few months ago. Yep.
I will say I was deeply disappointed in Steve Gabba's response.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. So
I think that, he represents the town. We represent the town. The planning board represents the town and the town's interests. And it's not in the town's interest that we are not re-engaged in this very, very important application.
Very well said.
I actually kind of think it's laughable. We're the conservation board. We don't get to weigh in on the conservation subdivision.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, to that point, as Steve Gabba said, when it comes back before the town board can ask for advice from the conservation board at that point. So I just was red flagging that for the conservation board as this proceeds. If that becomes important to do, before on that zoning change request.
I hope that we have that opportunity, Jason. Obviously, we're going to comment during the public comment period, right? That's what Andy has pulled together, the letter that Andy and Max has pulled together. But I also think that at this point, as Steve suggested, we as representatives for the town and working on behalf of the town should really look at recrafting that code.
Yeah.
Because as it is written, there are it's like Swiss cheese.
Yep.
Agree. I mean, I would personally agree that if people who have knowledge and expertise in this feel that way about that code, and it was not the intent of that, then it should be revisited. If this size of a project goes forward and people feel like it has evaded the intent of what was trying to be created, so I would bring that back to the board. Obviously it's not my decision, but I would bring that back to the full board if the conservation board decides to, participate in that process.
Yeah, and Jason, just for your benefit, as a matter of historical background, we spent a lot of time talking to Mike Leonard. The first time this came before the board, not only because of the issue raised by the horses, but the whole fact that on the one hand, there is an argument that technically this complies with the letter of the conservation subdivision provisions, but it absolutely violates the spirit of the idea of a conservation subdivision. And I think it was our feeling, which Mike, I think, agreed with. Even then, it was clear those needed to be redrafted. They just don't work.
Yeah.
Is that something that the town could consider hiring a consultant to work with us? Because I just feel like writing some of this stuff is not really our expertise. I mean, certainly not mine for this field. Would we entertain something like that, bringing in some, I mean, you guys would know better than I who would be the right experts to bring in, but since we didn't do the perfect job the first time, maybe we should get some assistance here, or somebody that has a little bit more experience. Maybe it doesn't exist, I don't know.
I
Oh, it
believe that
definitely
there was a consultant that was involved in writing that code, wasn't there, Andy?
Yeah, wasn't it Joel Russell?
I thought.
Let's
thought
not
Jill
get him
worked
again.
on it. At some point, it got. I
He's
don't
off the
know.
list.
I don't know exactly.
Yeah, there are people that do that. I mean, conservation subdivision is not something new. There, the other one that's written books on it, I can't think of his first name, Ardette. It's somewhat of a science. It's out there. We didn't make this up.
Right.
So yes, that should be looked into.
Well, okay. At 10:30, I don't think.
No.
What I'll also look into, I know people are probably following this community preservation plan and the associated fund that would be created through it. I don't know if this could potentially be a use for it. I don't think it is, but anyway, I'll reach out to the Hudson Highlands Land Trust about that, but maybe flagged for another night when.
Yeah. This is the longest.
My dog
meeting
is ready
we've had
for
in a
sleep,
long
so
time.
we gotta go.
I think this is the longest meeting we've ever had.
Yes.
Okay, so in that case, who is going to make the historic motion to adjourn the meeting?
Me.
Second.
And the dog.
And the dog is-
All in favor?
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
job.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.